So this is the fourth video in our series on the Sermon on the Mount. And again, I just want to repeat this. If we were to be super simplistic, look at the Sermon on the Mount, what we would see is three different sections. The first section being Jesus is describing the DNA of a Christian. That's where you get the first couple 20 verses in chapter 5. And then the big chunk of the sermon is this is what the Christian looks like in the world. And then he ends with three different illustrations of why it's imperative that we follow him. And today's video is going to be at the end of the middle section, right, where Jesus is talking about what a Christian looks like in the world, right before he gives these illustrations of the narrow path and the foolish and wise builders. And today's verse is an echo of chapters 20 in chapter 22 verses 36 and 40, right, where Jesus is asked the very question, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, love God, love people. This is kind of an echo of that, and it's known as the golden rule. And this is it in chapter 7 verse 12. It says this, it says this, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. This is known as the golden rule. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets, or this is the summation, this fulfills the law and the prophets. Many smart philosophers have said things just like this, but this is not just a lone statement. This is in the context of a bigger sermon said by Jesus himself. So if we were to forget the context, we would lump Jesus in with all these other philosophers that have said this very thing. But he's not just like every other world philosopher that have said some morality statement. But this is in the context of one of the greatest sermons ever preached, and so context matters a ton. What Jesus is doing in this particular verse is he is summing up his teaching, he's summing up his teaching and he's pointing our focus back to him. This is the same thing he does in chapter 5, verses 16 and 17, which we've talked about. He's summing up his teaching and he's pointing our focus back to him, which means that when it says whatever you wish, right? When it says whatever you wish that others would do to you, when it says that, it assumes that we know that we want what we wish to be what God wishes. That this isn't just your king of your ship, your captain of your ship, but this is you are following a certain particular person. You're following God and God's way. So we want what we wish to be what God wishes. That is one of the greatest teachings and privileges of the Christian life, is that we become more like Christ. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Jesus saves us, enabling us to live rightly. That's the main point here, that Jesus fulfills righteousness for us so that we can love others well. A lot of people think that they're loving people close to them, but we need our love to be conformed to what God's love is, because that defines what love is. Jesus saves us, enabling us to live rightly. So that means that we are called to live in the world. Remember, this is the summation of the section of the sermon talking about how Christians live in the world. We are called to live in the world as ambassadors of God's love. We are called to live in the world as ambassadors of God's love. If you were to go outside, and it's not quite fully into the spring yet, but if in a few months, if you were to go outside and see a ton of apples on the ground, and you were to look at the tree that all these apples are around, and you see apples on the tree branches, you would safely assume that that is an apple tree. The apples symbolize close proximity to the source of those apples. Just like that, we, in our love, sharing God's love, being ambassadors of God's love, want to symbolize close proximity to the source of love and life. We want others to know that God is near to them because of the love that God is showing through us. We want to love like that. So I don't remember where I heard this from, but in relation to this verse, I heard someone say, we praise God and we practice law, not the other way around. Right? We praise God and practice law, not the other way around. We don't praise the law and act like God and practice being God. We let God be God and we follow in his footsteps. Live the life God has saved you into. So here's a question I want to leave you with. How can you love those in your own home right now? How can you love those closest to you to remind them of God's love, of Christ's love for us, as he has saved us to help us live rightly, enabling us to live rightly? I hope this was a blessing to you. I cannot wait to see you guys on Thursday. Hope you're doing well. See you then.